We're in some terrible times in this country, and it's going to take some God fearing people to stand up and try to reel back in decency and respectability, not just in the citizenry, but in our government. All three branches, whether it's judicial, legislative, or executive. I want to show you something that the court system has just put out. It is utterly insane. Take a look at this. This is dated February 4, 2025. Judge orders Bureau of Prisons to provide sex change surgery to transgender pedophile inmate. I mean, when you are incarcerated, you shouldn't be able to get anything other than the bare necessities of life. I mean, and there's nothing necessary about sex changing a person, period, let alone a pedophile. But let's continue. A federal judge, I wonder how long this joker's been on the bench, has ruled that the Bureau of Prisons must provide sex change. Oh, man. Procedures to a convicted pedophile who recently began identifying as transgender. You know, I've heard about people, sex offenders, rapists, that all of a sudden decide to be transgender. And so they want to be locked up in a woman's prison. And some judges have allowed it. So you don't put a kid in a candy store. But let's continue with this one. This is even weirder. Brian Buckingham, 47, is serving more than 21 years in prison for sexually abusing his 10-year-old son and producing child sex abuse images. There's things that I could think about doing with Brian, but giving him sex surgery is not one of them. Shortly before sentencing, Buckingham began identifying as Nanny Love and claimed to be female. Can you get this? I mean, you could just claim anything these days and start getting it. You don't think criminals know that our system is corrupt and stupid? In court filings, Buckingham claimed that being unable to access previously provided gender affirming treatments. That means cross sexual hormones and giving people artificial breasts and all this other kind of nonsense, like hormone therapy, and worsening his depression and suicidal thoughts. Well, any man that thinks he's a woman, suicidal thoughts make sense because you're crazy as hell. The Post-Millennial reported attorneys for Buckingham argued the sex change procedures were medically necessary to treat gender dysphoria, and that denying Buckingham access to them is a violation of his Eighth Amendment rights. Now, I'm pretty sure the founding fathers were not thinking about giving pedophiles sex-changing surgeries when they came up with the Bill of Rights. And as far as helping his gender dysphoria, it reminds me of that lie that these hacks have been telling parents. Well, would you rather have a live daughter or a dead son? So in other words, they said, cut your son's penis off and make an artificial vagina, or cut your daughter's breasts off and make an artificial palace, or whatever the heck that thing is. So this person can continue with their delusion that there's something else. And then they end up killing themselves anyway, in many cases. Whereas you should be addressing the mental disease or demonic possession that has engulfed that individual and give them real help. God made them male and female. He didn't make them nothing else. And while man is running around trying to change what God did, all man is doing is working for the devil. Let's continue here. Ah, boy. Okay. Magistrate Judge David Christel, I guess this is the Joker that's listening to this mess, ruled in September that Buckingham is likely to succeed. See, we've given these judges too much power. This is too much power. This person is not God, and they've lost common sense. On his claim that the Bureau of Prisons' denial of sex change procedures is cruel and unusual punishment. How is that the case? How is that the case? This guy came into the federal criminal activity or jurisdiction as a man. He didn't come in there and we made him a woman, the United States government. He came in there as a man, and so now he wants to be a woman, and we're supposed to pay for it. You and I. Where am I at? I'm losing my place. Okay. In his ruling, Christel cited evidence that the Bureau of Prisons first acknowledged Buckingham's request for a sex change procedure, but then discontinued them without reason. They never should have started. This mess should never happen. Christel's recommendation was ultimately adopted by U.S. District Judge Ricardo Martinez, who ordered the Bureau of Prisons to provide consultations to Buckingham within 30 days for laser hair removal, facial feminization surgery, and voice therapy. We have adopted craziness to the level of the Frankenstein monster. So people can go to jail for committing a crime. And now in jail, we'll sit over there and give them laser hair removal and facial feminization, and then change their voice so they don't talk like a man anymore and start talking like a woman. I thought prison was supposed to be a place of rehabilitation and punishment, not a place to further craziness. This person was already messed up for being a pedophile, and then being a pedophile on his own flesh and blood. And now we want to let him continue with his delusion to the degree we're making him a quasi-female pedophile freakazoid. It's insane. Let's see, where was I? The Bureau of Prisons objected to the ruling. That makes sense. And asked the court to dismiss or delay Buckingham's case until a final verdict is reached in Kingdom versus Trump, a separate class action lawsuit filed by transgender identifying inmates challenging the Trump administration's restriction on sex change, drugs, and surgeries in federal facilities. My mother died in the 80s. If by some stroke of the Lord's will, all of a sudden she was brought alive today, and she read this thing, she would think she was reading a horror novel. It doesn't make any sense. None of this stuff it doesn't make any sense for a human being to think they can change who they are, their biological reality. That doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense that pedophiles, people with an abnormal and sick tendency towards children, would be on the streets, allowed on the streets. And it certainly doesn't make any sense that under the care of the federal government, citizens should be paying for them to be mutilated because of their desire. These people should have been able to afford to change their own appearance while they were in the streets on their own dime. But now that they're locked up, and by virtue of being locked up, shouldn't even be in a place that they could have sex, they're going to make us pay for converting them to something that is abnormal and ungodly. It's crazy. Buckingham's attorneys argue that he faces irreparable harm if he does not have access to sex change measures. If you cut off his wee-wee, he is irreparably harmed. He can't grow another one. They can't fix the old one, and the new stuff is no good. And as far as making a vagina, them things are an atrocity too. Men who have had their sexual organs converted to some kind of fake vagina has to wear a dildo or some kind of thing in them to keep the body from closing, because the body is trying to heal itself all the time. Buckingham, who was once involved in suicide prevention efforts for the Makai Indian Nation, admitted to producing explicit material featuring his son after a lengthy investigation that began on Discord in 2020. The videos were discovered after moderators flagged child abuse imagery linked to his account. Despite his conviction for child sexual assault, Buckingham's legal team insists the inmate should receive full access to transition-related treatments while serving time at FCI Butner in North Carolina. This stuff is crazy as all get out. And if America doesn't stop the craziness, it's over. The citizens of this nation have gone through enough. We're dealing with millions of illegals that should never be here. We're dealing with all kind of crap that we should never have to deal with. We're dealing with inflation. We're dealing with strife. We're dealing with people of different political groups ripping this country apart. And here we are talking about spending money for a convicted felon pedophile to have sex change surgery, voice therapy, feminization of his face, and laser hair removal. This stuff is crazy as hell. And if America doesn't stop this nonsense, hell is where we're all going to end up in.